Josh
Sweet.
Martin. Martin Built Homes.
Martin Built Homes.
I'm so excited that you're here. Before we dive in, I'm going to share a little story for some context for the audience. What triggered me reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, I want to peel back a few layers and pick your brain a little bit." But for everybody listening, Josh and I we go way back. I'm trying to think when those BNI days.
Yeah.
It's been years at least.
Yeah.
You know, 5-6 years.
5-6 years, I guess. Yep.
And I ran into you at the gym a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And I literally didn't recognize you, which is significant because I've known you you've been to my house, you know, we know each other.
Yeah.
Which got me, kind of got my gears turning and how excited I am for this conversation. Because really what I'm enjoying doing with the Chasing Greatness podcast is having conversations with people that inspire me. And we were talking about it a little bit, off camera, but kind of this idea of holistic health and holistic greatness. And it's been fun because we have the benefit of social media. So even though, we don't directly talk as much as we used to, it's been fun to see your business thriving, your family life thriving, and, hanging out with your kids. Your wife is crushing it. I just saw recently on Facebook. She won a CrossFit competition or something.
Yeah.
Podium.
Here in Durango. Yep. Yeah.
She got first place.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an intermediate class, the medium, the middle class, I guess you could call it. But
It's so cool.
Yeah, it was really awesome.
But it seems to me, it's where I'd like to start because, I like I said, I've known you for years, and it seems like there's been some really, really positive, and I don't even know if change is the right word for it, but positive evolution or positive, momentum in most aspects of your life. To paint the picture better for me, has there been was there a moment that sort of, triggered some significant change, or have you been on this trajectory forever? And I just finally started noticing that you're all lean and fit now, and
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. So I've always been like a personal development or self-help junkie, or I shouldn't say always. I worked in a coal mine for 4 or 5 years. That was in 2010, 2011. I don't think I worked there quite 4 years. But anyhow, my wife bought me a book, Think and Grow Rich. It was a condensed cassette version from the thrift store. And I started reading to that sucker. And I quit my job a week later.
Wow.
Honestly, I was like, I knew I didn't want to be in a coal mine forever either. I was still a framer by trade, but during the recession, things got a little bit tough. I think I probably went to work there around 2009. Housing market wasn't doing good. So I went to work in the coal mine so I could finish building my house. And anyhow, when she bought me that book, ever since that point, I was kind of a changed man going in that direction, but I almost became a junkie. Like I would listen to podcasts, 3 a day, and I would read books or listen to books, but it kind of became like after a while I almost got jaded to it. Like I've heard it. I've heard it, but probably, I don't know if you've ever heard of The Miracle Morning.
I have not.
By Hal Elrod. He lives in Austin also. Like we were talking about Austin a minute ago, but he wrote a book called The Miracle Morning, and my wife actually, she loves Hal Elrod. You ought to read it. Basically, he talks about a really simple morning routine. The acronym is SAVERS. I won't go into that. But kind of my wife started doing that, Miracle Morning, and talked about how great it was, and I read it. But I started doing this morning routine, which I still try to do a version of that morning routine to a degree. I don't get everything done. But what that caused me to do was some really deep work. Basically part of it is, you want silence, meditate, prayer, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading. You try to fit all that within an hour. Now I go deeper, and if I do everything, it takes me 2 hours.
Yeah.
But as I did that, and as I kept coming to the realization that health was like the key to everything for me. Like I had these big dreams. I wanted to become a millionaire, or I wanted to, hike. I love the outdoors, as you know, and I wanted to spend time with my kids in the outdoors, and I wanted to, do certain things. So no matter what I did, no matter what I wrote, no matter what I journaled, like it just came down to health. So
Physical health?
Yeah, physical health, more than anything, you know. And even though like my business was kind of up and down or whatever, so that kind of like I would visualize myself walking on the beach in Mexico with my wife with a 6-pack or whatever. Like I would literally just sit there and think about that, right? And I don't have a 6-pack yet, but you can actually start seeing my abs, which, I went from the year, I've been married 25 years. I went from 200 and probably 215, 220, about what I am now, to probably 250 in the first year I was married. So I haven't seen my abs for
24 years,
25 years.
Yeah.
So, it's been really exciting, but no matter what I did, no matter any journaling or whatever, I'm like, I got to get healthy, and kind of around that same time, I would say was probably pre-COVID a little bit. My wife started working out a lot, and she was going. We both did what do they call it, P90X.
Yeah,
we did that a couple times at the house, and then she started going to like a spin class a couple days a week, and she would go at 5:30 in the morning, and I thought she was crazy, And it's kind of funny, like my wife, she's never given me a reason not to trust her, ever. In fact, twice I think I could probably count for sure on one hand, maybe twice since we've been married, have I heard her say that another guy is hot.
Right.
Like she never even says it. Every once in a while. But anyhow.
And if she says it, he's probably really hot.
Yeah, exactly. So one guy was the trash man, which is kind of funny. I was like, that's random. She's like, yeah, the trash man's kind of cute. But anyhow, I couldn't handle her going to the gym by herself. Like I was like, well, what if there's another guy there or whatever, probably my own trust issues or whatever. And I also didn't feel like it was right for her to be getting out of bed. I'm like, what kind of man am I if my wife's getting out of bed at 4:30 in the morning to be at spin class at 5:30 in the morning? So I started going to spin class with her, and we did that for a year. During COVID, we actually took our spin class. Our spin class had to go outside of the rec center because they wouldn't let us do it inside. And like we had a good coach who was like, let's do it. Like it doesn't matter. So we'd be outside in the middle of the wintertime at 5:30 in the morning,
Social distance.
Yeah. And I'd be pissed off like every morning. I'm like, who does this?
Right.
Who gets out of bed at 4:30 in the morning? You
do.
And now I very seldom sleep past 5 or 5:30, but at that point in my life, I was like, this is dumb. But anyhow, that's kind of what got me started. But
at what point did it transition to, because I think a lot of people can relate to that aspect of the journey of, it's not fun.
Yeah.
We're waking up at 4:30, we're putting in the work outside or whatever. And maybe it never has, but I'm curious, at what point did it start to turn into less of a drag, and maybe even go so far as to say that you started to enjoy, the pursuit of physical health? Did it ever kind of transition for you to where it became fun or enjoyable?
Yeah, I think it's, really almost immediately. Like I would wake up and I would be pissed off that I was there, but by the end of the class I went to, I would be leaving in a peak mind.
Yeah.
Thinking, just like you said, I'm the one who's here. I'm the one who's up exercising when no one else is.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's already, started my day. I'm in a peak mind and I'm ready to go, and it just built from there. I remember the first day that the first week, I was like, I worked out 5 times this week, and how like extreme I really thought that was. I'm like, this is crazy. I worked out 5 times, and same thing now. That's kind of a bare minimum. I do something every day, 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. We'll go for a walk or a hike on Sunday or whatever, But I think just, seeing results, the results were slow as well. It wasn't a lot of magic pills. It just,
they don't make them, I hear.
People it's funny because you know how I ran into you, and so I'll run into people all the time who don't recognize me, and they're like, well, what'd you do? You know, and they all want to know the hack. And I tell them, I don't know if you want to know. It's, you know, it's been 2 or 3 years of hard work and working out and ups and downs and gaining weight and losing weight and really just sticking to you know, I'm a fast gainer. So I can gain 10 pounds in a weekend of being, you know, footloose and fancy free, which I've done. You know, I've gone up 10 or 15 pounds and then had to lose it again. So it's just hard work. But
It's almost like, have you heard the expression that self-care is a discipline, not a luxury?
yeah.
And it's almost like you're self-aware enough to know that the benefits outweigh the cost, and you have to just simply show up, like disciplined early on to know, like, I'm going to keep going. And I love the idea of the fact that your wife was kind of the driving factor, you know, early on and getting you out of bed. Because I'm the same way. Like, I would not be able to see, you know, I would not be able to stay in bed if my wife was out getting after it.
Yeah.
Which, thank goodness for, you know, strong relationships. And because that's been, you know, again, like through social media, it's been cool because it's been clear that that's been a shared journey.
Yeah.
You know, and something that you guys have kind of done together. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's made that relationship stronger too? Like having kind of, even if it's just having a shared activity, but I also feel like there's probably some depth there to, you know, bettering each other together. It's just really neat, I think.
Yeah. No, huge benefit there. And I'll go back to that book, The Miracle Morning. That book changed my wife's life. You know, she was the type of person that would sleep in. You know, we've homeschooled our kids, you know, all of them up until they're freshmen in high school. And then because of sports, they go to school. But she would, you know, before that, she would wake up at 8 o'clock and start, or 9 or 10, you know, but most of the time she'd wake up at 8 o'clock and she'd start homeschooling at 8:15 or 8:30. And her day was always kind of rough getting started.
Yeah. All about the kids.
Yeah. And so doing that miracle or that morning routine, you know, was really key. And she's gone, same thing. She's up at, you know, 3:30 or 4 in the morning, 3 days a week. And she's in teaching classes, and she's got her personal training certificate, and she's got her nutrition certificate, and she's her personal growth has gone really well, you know, as well. So as a couple, you know, we're like any other couple. We have our challenges and our, you know, our relationship woes, but you know, I take a lot of pride in the fact that when we go to the gym together, which we often do, you know, people are like, oh, there's a power couple, or they give us a hard time. And I'm like, well, we're not perfect like anyone else. But from the outside looking in, you know, it's a blessing, really. It's a huge thing that we're able to, you know, we work out together 2 or 3 times a week. And, you know, it's awesome. Yeah, I'd say it's been a huge plus for our relationship.
And how cool that you get to, like, you know, kill a few birds with the same stone, because you're getting some uninterrupted quality time with your spouse. You're also doing something that's bettering your life, also probably positively impacting the day.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's neat to hear that, because in order to accomplish that, you have to intentionally choose to do it. You know, I think that there's a lot of relationships that do things together, but usually it's out of, I'll call it convenience. You know, it's like we have our show, or we, you know, drink on Fridays, or, you know, whatever it is, that intentionality behind choosing what you're doing with your spouse, I think adds a layer of powerful uniqueness to it, because you're having to both choose, you know, so there's a two-way street on that side of it too. And you're choosing to do something that's difficult. I had Dr. Doug Miller was on the show. I talked to him 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to butcher it when we listen back, but he basically was saying that nothing worth having comes easy. And we use the analogy of that you have to walk uphill for, you know, for quality outcomes, you have to do the hard thing.
Yep.
And I think it kind of relates to that idea too of when people are seeing you and asking you what the trick is, and you have to say there is no trick.
Yeah.
It just reaffirms that idea that it has to be such a intentional choice. And I just think it's especially cool that you and your wife get to do it together.
Yeah.
And she's clearly crushing it.
Yeah. No, she's always, she has some really good genetics, and like even after, I've never known her where I couldn't see the side of her ab muscles. She's just always, and I keep telling her, I'm like, honey, you got to get in the gym. I'm like, you have a really great athletic body and it's not going to be hard for you. And she walks around with a 6-pack all the time and everybody hates her for it, but she does work hard, on top of that. But no, it is interesting for sure.
So going back to that Think and Grow Rich book, I'm fascinated, or that's the book, right? That made you quit your job.
Yep.
I'm fascinated to hear more about that because, there's kind of been these themes with conversations I've had with people on this show of taking a risk or, leaping out of the comfort zone, so to speak. I want to hear more about that. What specifically triggered you to quit your job? And did you have a plan, or was that kind of what spurred entrepreneurship and business ownership and everything for you?
Well, I've always had a pretty entrepreneurial mindset. I've had multiple construction businesses. My brothers and I ran a framing business here in Durango in the early 2000s, and we just couldn't keep up with. We ran like 25 or 30 employees, and we couldn't handle the cash flow and the stress of running that many employees. So that business went under. But when I quit the coal mine, I went there, like I said, during the recession or just after the recession, and I had started building a house, and like right when the market crashed, I had started building it, and then there was no work. And so I went to work in the coal mine, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be like. But a lot of people, when you get there, they call it the golden spike. Like, it's a crazy job. If anyone's never been underground, you should go underground. It's a really unique experience, and it's extremely high tech, and they're probably some of the best people you'll ever meet. Great pay, great benefits. Most of the guys there are making, $100,000 a year, and they have the best insurance money can buy, and they retire millionaires after 20 or 30 years. I mean, it's not a bad gig. So it's a hard job to get out of sometimes, So what happened is kind of two things happened. I got that book from my wife. And then the mine caught on fire, so they actually shut it down. They closed all the portals and sealed it up, and they pump it full of nitrogen just to put out the fire. And we started doing really menial tasks. They didn't really care what we did. They would put us in our truck. They called it a man trip, and it was like 12 of us, our crew. We would jump in the truck, and we would drive to some spot, and we would hang out there for the shift. They would say, go clean up garbage over here. Well, after a month of that, there's nothing left to clean up, and every room in the place is organized, and there's nothing to do. And I think it was shut down for 6 or 8 months total.
Oh, wow.
So that was already hard. Like, I'm like, I'm getting paid. I was getting paid like $35 an hour to do nothing.
But you weren't feeling fulfilled, or
I was
challenged?
Yeah, and the job was already boring anyway. So that type of work is comparable to factory work. Once you learn your task, I was a roof bolter, and they would make a cut, and I would go in and stick bolts up in the roof, and really hard work, and it was fun. But after a couple months of doing that, you're doing the same thing, all the time. And every job like that is down there. Basically, once you learn it, it's highly repetitive. So, and because of the government regulation, you have to work there for 4 years before you can advance to like a foreman position. So you can only advance so quickly anyways. So your main job is just staying alive. It's fairly dangerous occupation, and you just have to stay alive. And I was already struggling with that. Like, I'm like, this is horrible. I'm getting dumber. I'm not applying myself. I'm not growing. It's the same thing every day. And so when I started reading that book, it just opened my eyes to a million things. And so I I'd know construction. I'm a framer by trade. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go start my own construction company. So I just quit and started it. And it's been an interesting progression from there, you know.
So you walked away from a 6-figure job with great benefits.
Yeah. Yeah.
To start something that really you've got experience in framing, but from the, this is obviously, back then, but the general contracting world had to have been somewhat new to you.
Yeah. No clue how to run a business at all. Like, in fact, my first job that I did, the client, it was a cost plus job. Great clients. I'm still friends with them today, but they said, hey, can you give us a breakdown of where our money has gone? And, talk about a deer in the headlights. I had no idea. I literally had to go back through my bank statements, for a couple months and then try to decide where all the transactions went and then come up with some sort of report. I had no idea of bookkeeping. I had no idea of cost tracking. They call that like blind optimism or whatever, right? Like you're like, yeah. And I've always been pretty ambitious and risk adverse, so I didn't really care. But for years I didn't keep books, and then I kept books on an Excel spreadsheet for years, and then I had to pay an accountant to go through my Excel spreadsheets and put all that into QuickBooks, and that's definitely not my forte, is that aspect of it.
I want to hear a little more of your mindset behind that, because I think that that's unique to take that big of a risk that confidently. Was it that you just felt or knew that you were made for more, or that you weren't feeling like, what was the driving factor behind going, I'm going to start my own job? Because I'd imagine you already had kids at that point.
Yep.
Safe income.
Yep.
Happy wife, great, really.
Yeah. Nice house.
And so many, because the reason why I'm curious about it is I think there's a lot of people that they would have a tendency to go like, this is great. Mm-hmm. The mine's shut down. We're still getting paid.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to,
yeah. Most of the crew was like that. Literally put my feet up. Yeah. Most of the crew was like, oh, why are you quitting? This is great. We don't have to do anything.
Why'd you quit?
Well, I've always been really I love time freedom, just the thought of time freedom. So, working shift work, I would miss half of my kids' wrestling tournaments or peewee football games or church on Sundays, right? Like basically I missed half of everything. And so that was always really frustrating. But I've never liked anyone telling me when to go to work ever since I was a kid. When to go to work, when to take lunch, when to go home. I've always wanted to go to work, it's not like I want to sleep in, but I want to go to work and I want to work until the job's done, and then I'll take a break, and then I want to work until I get something done, so, and I've just always had a really hard time with people dictating when exactly to do something. So, I just really wanted more freedom. And it was a struggle. Luckily, my wife has always been really, there's never been a time where I haven't paid the bills, So she's always been really supportive of that. She also grew up in a family of some entrepreneurial parents too, so that's helped her out. But, the biggest thing I considered is what was the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that could happen? And there wasn't one.
Get another job.
I could get another job. I could go back to work in the coal mine. I could go get a job, framing houses for somebody. The worst case scenario for me wasn't bad. I literally didn't care. And I still think about that stuff today. I'm like, okay, because I have more to risk now. But I'm like, if it all failed, yeah, it would suck. But it's kind of fun to start over also, right? You're like, well, let's do it again and take what I've learned and do it better, and faster.
Kind of fun to start over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to, but really, if everything hit the fan and I had to move into a single wide trailer with my wife on mattress on the floor, it still wouldn't feel like the end of the world to me, as long as I had my wife and my kids and my relationships, right? You know, everything else is, you know, kind of comes after that. You know, I'm not saying I want that to happen, but it helps me take risks.
Yeah.
You know, my risks are more calculated now for sure. But for years, I would risk a lot because I really didn't see a downside.
Well, and I think that's what a powerful perspective to say, you know, if things, worst case scenario happened, like let's say we hit rock bottom, and you are so aligned to say that as long as I would have my wife and my kids and my relationships, we could still be happy, you know, in a single wide trailer or whatever it might be. I joke all the time that my rock bottom is my dad's basement. So I'm really grateful that he has a nice big basement.
Yeah.
But I want to unpack that a little bit because I think that it's an interesting perspective that I think you have of recognizing what's valuable, maintaining hunger to still go, you know, pursue these dreams and these passions. I mean, we just before this podcast had a meeting about a new business idea you have that's, you know, super exciting. And there's this forward momentum with a really grounded, stable foundation that I think if more people could wrap their head, because it's like this idea of, you know, most men live lives of quiet desperation, where I feel like from your seat right now, there's this like comfort in the risk because you've got these relationships in place. And that's really what matters. Mm-hmm. It almost like it removes the perceived risk of entrepreneurship or quitting jobs or whatever, because it's not that important.
Yeah.
The relationships are more important anyway.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a relationship-based person. I learned that more and more as I kind of dig into the things that I'm good at. But, you know, I've lived in a tent for months at a time starting over, and I've lived in a single wide trailer, and I've lived in my parents' basement, and some of those times were the best times of my life, you know, looking back. But
were they at the time?
Yeah, no, I really don't, you know, I don't have any regrets. You know, there was time my wife and I were poor enough that we shared a $1.50 shower, and we had 5 minutes of cold water for both of us to get clean. You know, 5 minutes of hot water before it went cold. You know, I was in Telluride. We lived up there for 6 months in a tent in our early 20s before we had kids. And that, I mean, it was a blast. I mean, it was definitely some of the best times of my life, you know. But I think what it comes down to is my hobby's growth. You know, I've thought about that a lot. Like I think growth is important. And I think as long as you're growing, then who cares, really, you know? So I'm really fascinated with personal growth, and that's what inspires me when I see somebody who's been through like the worst of it and they're still going, like they're still gritting it out. They're still toughing it out. Like it doesn't really matter what their financial state is. What matters is that they're just like, it's crazy to see some people. Like I grew up, you know, talk about support and relationships. I had a really good upbringing, right? Like my parents were married until my mom passed. They loved me, you know. I didn't have any really hard things when I was a kid. We didn't have a lot of money, but we never knew it, right? There was always food on the table. So, but I see people who have gone through the craziest stuff, right? And they're so gritty. Like that's awesome to me, you know. And what inspires me to just, you know, keep going. That's what I've learned also, you know, small things done continuously over time or whatever that quote is, you know, that's what gets you. That's what was my health goal, right? And I learned like not to focus on your results, just focus on your actions, focus on your habits, you know, just gritting it out. But yeah, I love growth, I guess.
Well, and the cool thing about growth is that it compounds.
Yeah.
You know, and I one of the things that I've been trying to figure out how to articulate, so I'll try again now, is that the concept of compounding can apply to every area of our lives. You know, so obviously you invest, it compounds, you know, and I think most people can kind of wrap their head around that. But relationships can compound. Our physical health can compound. And it's that idea that you just mentioned of consistently doing the thing right over a long extended period of time. The results genuinely do compound across the board. I mean, like, you work on your marriage consistently.
Yeah.
You look back and, 10 years later, and it's exponentially stronger than it ever was.
And it works both ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Good point.
There's a book called The Compound Effect. I don't know if you've read that. Great book. But that's what he talks about. If I eat a cheeseburger right now, like, it's not going to kill me. It's not even going to affect me. If I went and got a cheeseburger on the way home, it'd be great, But if I ate a cheeseburger every day for 20 years, it will kill me, right? And it's the same thing with anything else, Yeah, if I work out for 30 minutes or an hour today, it's not that big of a deal. But that if I do that every day for 20 years, my life's going to be 100 times better than it was, right, if I'm dead from eating a cheeseburger. So it's all those little things that add up, and it really is, that's what he talks about in that book, is that it's the little things, and they're easy to do and easy not to do. But, it's just choices. So,
yeah. Do you feel like, because I just think it's cool, you almost project this like stoicism or like calm confidence, that a quote comes to mind when you're talking about kind of that mindset, and it's something that resonates with me, but it's basically this idea that I've never met a strong person with an easy past. And that, through these like growth opportunities and trials and adversity, it's actually part of what makes life so amazing. And it makes resiliency and stuff, because we can, fight our way through them. I just last weekend, I ran my first ever ultra marathon, and it was actually a life-changing experience for me, because in a very real way, I realized that we are all capable of so much more than we think, if we just keep going.
Yep.
And I applied it in the running sense, but to your point about sleeping in a tent and overcoming challenges, and I know that you've been in a difficult industry as well, with recessions and interest rates and the real estate market. The variables are huge. I love that idea of just kind of like the consistency. Yeah. And that you can weather the storm and keep showing up and keep getting it done. Do you feel like that's something that you learned, or that's something that you've kind of always had in your nature, or where do you think that comes from?
It's definitely learned through experience for me. I think some people get it when they're younger. Like I said, my childhood was pretty good. But, as you were talking, the last, 20 years or the last 10 years since I've been running my business, it's been, and sometimes the worst times in my life and the hardest times in my life. And, I've talked about my wife a lot, but it's amazing how much she's helped me to not stop. I heard a quote years ago where it was saying, the guy just said the biggest success, I can't even remember who it was, but the biggest key to success was just not quitting. And, I couldn't even count how many times that I said I quit, or that I wanted to quit, or that I told my wife, like, I'm done. I bet you it's been more than 10 times where I finished a job and owed the lumberyard $10,000 or $20,000 or more, and I would just talk to the lumberyard and say, hey, I can't pay you. Let me make payments for 6 months. Or, I actually have PTSD from looking at my bank account. I still hate to look at it because there's been so many times where I thought I had $40,000 or $50,000 in there, and I looked in there and it was in the negative, or it was empty. Back to my good bookkeeping skills, right? Not my strong point, but yeah, that also helps my strength and my confidence, is because I know now that that's just part of business. Like, cash flow is a part of business. So you're gonna, and I hear stuff. One of my lumber reps told me, he's like, yeah, those big companies, he's like, they have bigger problems with cash flow than you would ever think, and he was talking about some of the local big companies that had a hard time paying their lumber bill also, right? And then you hear stories of guys on podcasts who almost lost everything. I was just listening to one before I got here about a guy who, had a salesman working for him, and paid him his last $22,000 on Christmas Eve for his commission and didn't have any, didn't have a dime to his name, and I couldn't tell you how many times that's happened.
Oh yeah.
But if you quit, you never know that, you never learn that it'll work out. Like, yeah, it's going to suck and you're probably going to cry and you're probably going to be mad and you're probably going to yell but it all you have to do is just keep going, keep a good attitude, keep moving forward. And that's the other thing I know now is like it'll work out, one way or the other, so it'll keep going.
And especially if worst case scenario is a single wide with the people you love.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and there's been times where, you're like, you hear people say, never quit, but also know when to quit. And sometimes I'm like, have I gotten too used to just like not quitting, right? Like, is this a dumb thing that I'm doing? Is there a better business, And
well, I'll share with you, and I have the luxury of, by nature of my business, I work with hundreds of business owners, and it's been cool. One of the neatest things for me has been, since I've gone out on my own, I've gotten to kind of lean into personality traits that used to be perceived as weaknesses, I think, in kind of the corporate setting.
Yeah.
I'm spontaneous. I lean into emotion. I lead with heart, all these things. Love having these conversations. Yeah. And by nature, what that's allowed me to do is like really connect with a lot of business owners. And it's worth everyone knowing that every single business owner feels that in every industry, in every business, across the board. And it's been interesting to see, because I feel like, especially when I get to talk to entrepreneurs, the challenges and the adversity, there's a lot of parallels actually between physical fitness, people that pursue physical fitness, and entrepreneurs. There's a lot of parallels, because it's like getting comfortable in the uncomfortable and knowing that pain is growth, and putting in the work. Yeah. It's funny because at Ascent Digital we have had more ups and downs than I can imagine. Like Brittany and I were just talking the other day. It's like, if you added up what we've been through in the last 2 years, it's a lifetime worth of adversity.
Yeah.
In 19 months. And almost now there's this like calm confidence that when it's hard, we're like, we've been through worse, that I can get through that too. Or that didn't stop us.
Yeah.
Now we can. And I think it's been interesting because there's this shared experience that happens with entrepreneurs that then I think translates to life in a lot of ways. Like you get good at being under stress or uncertainty, like you mentioned the bank account thing. Like I think that it's almost something I wish more people got the chance to explore or to experience.
Yeah.
Because when you've got that's that idea of like, you don't understand until you've done it.
Yeah.
Like I can't explain to somebody how stressful it is to know that I might not make payroll next week.
Yeah.
Or that I did make payroll, but I skipped my check.
Yeah.
Next level stressors. But the result of that is that you end up like prepared to overcome other adversity in a more strong way.
Yeah.
And I think the same applies to physical fitness. So I'm kind of curious because your physical fitness journey, it's a visible one.
Yeah.
I can see it sitting in front of me. Do you feel like that has, I'll call it trickled into, but like had other benefits into other areas of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, for one, and I think a lot of people feel this way, that exercise, it's a form of meditation, right? So, I don't do a lot of the hobbies that I used to do, but the second I step into the gym, everything goes out the window. So for one, it's a form of meditation. It's a quick way to forget about, the world and what's going on. Another thing that's really interesting, at least in the gym I go to, it's really interesting because I would say 70 to 80% of the active gym goers are entrepreneurs and business owners or real estate agents. And it's really, I'm super surprised on how many of the people that are the most active in the gym are also some of the busiest people that you know. And I think when you hold yourself in a high priority, it also helps you to, like I'm not going to miss my workout. I joke about it all the time. My wife's, even more diligent. And when we travel, I always give her a hard time, because she's not going to miss a workout. We have to stay in a motel where the gym is or whatever. But to me, it's been amazing to me to watch the same thing happen with myself. I tease her all the time, but the same thing, like, it's just a part of who I am now to go do something. Today I rode my bike for, took my mountain bike out for 10 miles before I came. And it's awesome to see. A year ago, I couldn't have made that trip in an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I made it in an hour today. And it's neat to see that progress. So, I don't know. I just think that the confidence really, to answer your question, I guess, is when you start seeing results from your diet and you start seeing results from your exercise that you've put in, you carry yourself differently. People see you and people notice. And, I can't tell you how many compliments I've had over the last, year or two of just the way I'm carrying myself, just the way I act, just the way I'm 10 times more confident. The sad thing is I didn't realize that I wasn't confident before. I always thought I was a confident person. And I think I was to a point. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done the things that I've done, But my confidence is, definitely 10 times what it was. I feel more empowered to do, whatever. I went on a mountain bike ride a couple of weeks ago in Moab that I shouldn't have been on. And I cramped up for 2 hours. I rode through cramps. And, but that, I couldn't, 2 or 3 years ago, they would have had to bring a Jeep or a chopper to get me, right? Like I couldn't have done it, So it's neat to be able to say, yeah, let's go and we'll figure it out. And, you're not going to die out there, so.
I think it's fascinating that you say you didn't realize that you weren't as confident. And I'm wondering how, because one of my missions with this whole show is to inspire people and hopefully we convey some messages to people that, spur action and some self-reflection and things like that. And I think that that's a fascinating point you just brought up because I've seen it in my life as well. I've always been a confident person. I think the best way I could explain it would be there's different layers to me, to this whole idea of holistic greatness or growth.
Yeah.
And it's this layer is good, but then you break through it and then you realize there's another layer. Mm-hmm. And then you realize there's another layer. And it's not like that necessarily. In fact, when Dr. Miller was on the show, he even asked me, he's like, what would your life have been like if you didn't resign from your job? Mm-hmm. And the truth is it would have been a good life.
Yeah.
I would have stayed in the corner office. I would have kept the salary and I would have had a good life. I didn't realize how great it could be through all of the challenges. And that's this, I think, kind of conflicting realities is that, and I think that's why it's interesting that at the gym you see a lot of kind of entrepreneurial, minded people working on their physical fitness as well, because it's you realize in so many different aspects of your life that it can be better. And you don't know necessarily how yet. Mm-hmm. You just know that, through work and discipline and commitment, this next evolution can come. I just think it's so fascinating to hear you say that you didn't realize that you weren't confident only now that you have this next level of confidence.
Yeah, no, it is. And it took me a while to realize that. And the other thing that I realized is that it was, and I tell people this all the time, and sometimes I'm blunt with people who are overweight, and I'm like, you're just lying to yourself. And I told myself lies for years. I've always been a big guy, and even in my 30s, I weighed 260 pounds. I could touch a basketball rim with ease up until I was probably 38, and I literally thought that if I lost 50 pounds that I would be jacked and ripped, and then I lost 50 pounds and I still was fat, and I still didn't look as good as I wanted to look, and I just realized I would tell people, well, I don't eat that bad, or I eat really healthy, or my wife, because my wife's always been a health nut. She's always cooked with as much like all natural or organic food. Well, it doesn't really matter if it's healthy if you eat 3 portions, right? So, I mean, so it's crazy when I look back at the lies that I tell myself, and I hear family members and I hear people people I know say that all the time. Oh, I barely eat anything, yet they're 50 pounds overweight, and I don't mean to sound hard. In fact, I feel for people like that because I know looking back how actually unconfident they are. And I know how hard it is to like walk into a room, to be overweight and to feel uncomfortable. And I can see right through it. Like when I see somebody walk in, I can just see it immediately because I've been there. So I feel for them, but I also know that they're probably telling themselves lies, right? I think it's a natural protection, It's like kids all think every kid you talk to is probably the best at whatever sport they're playing, right? Even though they might be really bad at it. If you ask them, they think they're the best. I think there's some sort of natural protection there.
Yeah, which, has unintended consequences, does a disservice. That idea of protecting, I think, does more harm than good. I'm curious, what's the narrative you tell yourself now?
One thing I thought of a minute ago, as you talked about like growth, and once you get to one place, then there's another. I love what they call it the law of relativity, and it's really interesting because everything's really relative. How I'm doing now financially relative to what I was doing, 5 years ago is better. But to where I want to be, I still feel like I'm not making nearly as much money as I want to make, right? Same with my health. I look in the mirror and I'm like, if I would have known that I look like I do now 3 years ago when I started losing weight, I'd have been like, that would be awesome. I'd love to look like that. But when I look in the mirror now, I'm still not satisfied, right? And I think there's some danger to that. There's one guy that talks about, his name's Dan Sullivan, about never getting to the horizon. And there's danger in that, right? You set a goal, and once you get to that goal, there's another goal. And that can be discouraging, right? To me, it also excites me because I know you're never there. Like once you reach one place, there's always something else to reach for, right? So I think that can be discouraging, but I also think that to me that makes for like growth. Like you never can stop growing. You never can get better. Do you know Ed Milet?
Yeah.
You ever listen to him?
Yep.
He was saying the other day, he's like, well, I'm not bragging, but he's like, my household expenses are $1 million a month, right? And it's just all relative. I just love it. Like for him, that's what his living expenses are, is $1 million a month, and I'm like, you could look at that however you want. Maybe you could think, oh, that guy's living excessively, but I don't think that with Ed Milet. The guy's a great guy, right?
Well, and I think that the grounded perspective you have, coming back to, you had mentioned like you'd still be happy if it all goes away and as long as you still have, your wife and your kids. I think that grounded perspective likely removes some of the danger of that horizon dilemma, because I think it then allows you to be grounded and grateful, happy, fulfilled, whatever you want to call it, while also maintaining ambition and drive and hunger. And, the bar can move in a healthy way because which I think is important for people to recognize too, because if you're always chasing that horizon, the goal's always moving, and that's the measurement. Yeah. That's one of the things. So a concept that has come to light through all of these conversations, and there's been multiple of it, and one day I'll learn how to articulate it well, but it's been this idea that you can use whatever you want to motivate you. Chip on your shoulder, money, the promotion, like use whatever you want to motivate you, but don't use it as the measurement of success.
Yeah.
Is your life aligned with your values? That should be your measurement of success.
Yeah.
So you've got, and that's where I think it ties in to this perspective you're sharing of that grounded nature that I also think is fascinating and unique, to know that it'll all be okay if it all goes away as long as I have my family. but I also want to make $1 million a month.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
that
Yep.
balance I think is powerful because it positions you to be able to make moves in a healthy way. Because if you're chasing the measurement, if the income is how you determine your fulfillment of life, if the status, the social status,
Yeah.
if that's what the measurement is, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And then the horizon idea can be scary. But if you can stay motivated and eyes to the horizon while grounded and grateful, man,
Yeah.
you're onto something.
No, I think, and you know, I've had to really dig deep to figure out what my why is. You know, there's one guy I listen to quite a bit. Oh man, I can't remember his name. Anyhow, he was in mid-century, and he recorded a great speech. I'll send it to you. But one thing he says in there is that success is the continuous pursuit of a worthy ideal, and I've always really liked that because success is just chasing your goals. Basically, that's all it is. As long as whatever your goal is, whatever your worthy ideal is, as long as you're working towards that, then you're successful. Doesn't matter what it is. You know, if you want to be a teacher and you're becoming a teacher, you're successful, you know, and I've always liked that. But, you know, for me, one of my biggest whys, like I said earlier, has been, you know, time freedom. I want to be able to do what I want, you know, when I want, with who I want. Also, self-reliance is really important to me, but that's in all aspects of life, right? Like I want to be self-reliant spiritually. I want to be self-reliant financially. I want to be self-reliant health-wise, right? I don't want to have to rely on anyone to tell me what to do or how to do it. You know, I don't want anyone saying, this is what you have to do, you know. And I've never been a money-oriented person. You know, in fact, to this day, it makes me awkward. I do make financial goals, but it's awkward for me to be like, hey, I want to have, like right now, my goal is to have a net worth of $100 million, right? Which is crazy, right? I read a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan. And Hardy I don't know if you've read that. Great book. But they talk about setting a goal that makes you uncomfortable, and that's why that's my goal, is because 10 million was my goal. But to be honest with you, I don't feel like that's, like I'm not there, but I don't feel like that's that impossible, you know, to say I want my net worth to be 100 million. That's crazy. And I don't even like to say it. It feels awkward, right? Like I'm like, okay. But you know, in this day and age, you know, 100 million's not what it used to be. I mean, $1 million is not much to have a net worth of $1 million. And, you know, it's just a number. But for me, the lifestyle, I think, is what I just have to work backwards.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, you know, setting enormous goals. The great thing about setting an enormous goal is that if you fall short, you still do. So when I ran that ultra, I put out to the world that my goal was to run 100 miles.
Yeah.
And it was vulnerable for me because I had never ran more than 26.2. I've ran a marathon
crazy.
and I thought I'm going to run 100 miles.
Yeah.
And I ended up finishing the run at 65.6 miles.
Insane.
But I don't think I would have ran 65.6 miles had I not set my goal on 100 miles.
Yeah.
And what's been interesting about it, and I think it relates to all goals, even the net worth goal or income or whatever, is that by setting the bar that high, one, I learned how huge the goal is.
Yeah.
I have a new appreciation for the goal.
Yeah.
But I also learned that it is doable.
Yeah.
And now I'm 10 times, I'm hungrier than I've ever been. I will run 100 miles in less than 24 hours by the end of 2024.
That's awesome.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I learned a lot, though, along the way. And I think that there's some power in, like, but it also ties into that idea of being grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of times people are reluctant to set huge goals because of the fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
When, you know, coming back to our conversation, and I think that very fascinating sort of dichotomy that you have in your life of this hunger and groundedness, you can set huge goals when the groundedness is there as well, because if you fall short of it, that's not what you're measuring, you know, your life fulfillment on.
Yep.
It's like, I'm going to chase that because I'm chasing it.
Yeah.
But if you end up, you know, with a net worth of 90 million, I'm sure you'll be
Yeah,
happy.
who cares, right? Even 50 million. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I've always loved that saying, you know, becoming a millionaire isn't about becoming a millionaire. It's about who you become, right? And being that I'm, you know, a personal growth guy, I love personal growth, and I love that. To me, the reason I want to have a net worth of $100 million isn't really to have $100 million in the bank. It's just because I know the journey that's going to get me there is going to be probably awesome, but also probably really hard, right? Like, and I don't like to think about that like anyone else does. I don't want adversity in my life, but you know that it's not going to come easy, right? You know you're going to have times when you want to quit, or this is stupid, or it's not worth it, or I can't do it, But you also know if you keep going that you're just going to keep getting closer.
Yeah. Is that why then, kind of, because we talked about, the book and that transition moment, because one thing I'm curious is certainly a safer path would be for you to, go into the trades, make six figures, stack some into the stock market, you could do the.
I think I really do get bored really quickly. Like I struggle with that every day in life. And I think that's also just part of my personality. Like I literally couldn't handle working the same job for 20 or 30 years. It would drive me nuts. Even a couple years, when I was younger, I'm a framer by trade. And I became a really good framer quickly. But part of that was because I wasn't good at holding down a job. I couldn't handle working for the same job for maybe a year, mostly 6 months. But I worked in, 4 or 5 different states for 20 different contractors, and I would pick something up everywhere I went, and I would learn. And then after I framed for 5 years, I was a better framer than most guys that had been framing for 10 years, just because I knew 10 different tricks, right? Because I would frame with a guy, and he'd been framing with the same guy for 10 years, and all he knew was what that guy taught him, But my experience, even though people are like, man, you've had a lot of jobs, I don't know if I want to hire you. And I'm like, well, maybe you're right. But I had a lot of confidence, and because of that, I was able to, learn quickly, and learn different stuff. But I just don't think, I'm glad I wasn't, born in the 50s where you were expected to, work a factory job and retire.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it. And even like we're talking about that other business idea today, that's just part of I drive my wife nuts. She's learned to just be like, okay, whatever, honey, because every week I have a different idea.
Yeah.
So
another thing I think that's interesting that I'm picking up on through our conversation, and I want to hear more about it from you, because it seems that you have this ability to get new information and then implement it into your life, whether it's like the 10 different framing jobs and learning some tricks, or one of the things I think is really unique is that you read that book and then made a drastic change. I think there's a lot of people that get the information, but for whatever reason don't act on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear, first of all, if that's a safe assumption of me to be making of you.
Yeah.
But help me understand that a little bit more, because it does seem like you're the type of guy that gets new info and then applies it.
Yeah, I think that's one of my, I don't know, you could call it an area of genius, or you could call it a bad personality trait. I'm really
depends on the day.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really spontaneous. I actually took a personality test once, and it said I was a fast starter, and it made a lot of sense to me because I've always been like that. And I think that's probably a big personality trait, to be honest with you. I just I love getting stuff going. Even in my construction business now, like I said, I'm a framer by trade. By the time we start breaking ground, and then especially framing, I actually don't care if I ever go to that job again. I'm really a front end guy, and I've learned that about myself. I can finish projects, but that's not my strong point. You'll meet people that are really good at finishing jobs. They can't even focus, or they can't function in their life until that job's finished. I only finish jobs because it's the right thing to do, because I want a good reputation, but it's not because I want to. I'd rather start 20 jobs and let someone else finish it.
So it's like you get the info and you're like, I got to put this somewhere.
Yeah. And I have a hard time with conversations with people too. I'm a really fast processor. It drives my wife nuts because she's the opposite. She's the person that's going to read the manual front to back, and she's going to, I'm like, okay, sounds good. Let's do it right now, and she's the opposite. So we make a good mix there, but I'll have a conversation with someone and I'll get the information I need, and I will interrupt them with another question before they finish answering my first question.
Because you're already thinking ahead to the next thing.
And I process things really quickly, and I'm just ready to move on. And anytime I start anything, and it's funny because even back to high school sports, like I would start off really strong. I would get a varsity position even as a freshman in high school or sophomore. I mean, I went to a small school. I wasn't like a super awesome athlete, but I was a good athlete, and I'd always get the starting position. But a lot of times I would lose that starting position by the end of the year because I was just kind of over it, So I've always just been a fast starter, just let's go, let's jump in. And so I'm learning now, through studying and through learning things that you should do things you're good at, right? So that's I'm not a detail-oriented person. I just like to get stuff going and then find the right people to keep it going.
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah.
So,
Why then do you think you've been able to stick with fitness?
I think I just, early on I was really, like a lot of people are, really results oriented, right? I'd lose like 10 pounds in a couple of weeks sometimes, like really quickly, but then I would quit losing it. I think I've just learned to embrace the process of it. And now I don't really go to the gym to get big. I love it that I'm gaining muscle and that I'm starting to see muscle, but I just go to the gym, I feel like, just because it's who I am and it's the right thing to do, It puts me in a peak mind. I know if I go there, I'm going to feel better when I leave, So I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I think it's just been a good habit, and I'm not where I want to be really either, so I know I got a while more of grinding it out, and I'm scared to death to lose it, to be honest with you, scared to death. When I see people or I see pictures of myself, that's probably one of my biggest fears, is falling back into where I was,
It's almost like with the Miracle Morning and, going to the gym or whatever, that you've sort of figured out these things that contribute to the best version of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, I'm going to stick with that because you even mentioned with exercise, you've got a sharper mind.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
You're performing optimally when you do
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah. What I've learned, and most successful people that you talk to will have some sort of morning routine and or meditation. But it's part of living on purpose. You have to be intentional with your life. If you're not intentional, you're not on purpose, and you're not going to go anywhere. I love I can't even tell you who it was. I'm full of quotes that I don't know who said them, but there's a guy who talks about a ship leaving a harbor without a destination or without a crew. They just turn on the motors and send it out of the harbor. That ship will never reach its destination, But if you give it a crew and a destination, it's going to get there 99 times out of 100, and it's amazing to me how many people don't have a destination, don't have a plan, don't have a goal. I have four boys. 2 of them are in high school right now, and I talk to their friends all the time. I'm like, well, what are you going to do after high school? And they're like, I'm just going to go with the flow, just wherever the road takes me, and that's a tough age, granted, to make that decision. But I run into adults all the time also who don't have a goal. And I've spent half of my life looking for my goal, and I still don't know what I want to do. But you have to have something in between, right? You have to have, like, this is what I'm going to do. And then that might change, but then you can work towards that. But another book, I think they call it Interview with the Devil. Have you ever read that?
I haven't.
Oh, man, great book. It talks about how basically, how the devil or Lucifer preys on people who don't have a destination and who don't have clarity of where they're going. It was written by the same guy who wrote Think and Grow Rich.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll add that to the list.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's one of the best books I've read recently. It's
Living on Purpose.
Yeah.
That's one of the best quotes I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's so true.
Yeah.
And I can totally see how, if you're living without a purpose or a goal or a destination, that you can fall victim to these other things, whether it's the devil or, temptation or complacency or whatever it might be. But when you've got a purpose and a goal and a direction, it helps you focus. It helps you understand why you're doing the hard things.
Yeah.
And it's like, it almost even justifies the journey because you're headed somewhere. I've told my wife that forever. And I've even told, and I don't, not in an arrogant way, but that I'm headed somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where,
That's
but
right.
I do know that I'm headed there.
Yeah.
And I'm going a certain direction.
Yeah.
An upward trajectory
Yeah.
in life. And Jordan Peterson talks about that, of aligning yourself with people that are aiming upwards.
That's right.
As opposed to, aiming downwards.
Yeah.
But man, life without a purpose,
Yeah.
living without a purpose, what a profound statement.
Yeah. No, it really is. And I even find more ways that applies. I listened to a guy speak in Moab a couple of weeks ago, and he challenged everyone to always, he's a really fit guy, really into diet and health. But he was like, you always have to enter. He said, find a race today and enter into it, and which I've never been a person, like, I don't want to run like you do. I've no desire to run. I like to ride my bike. But that being said, I'm like, I need to find something to compete in, whether it's an adventure race or whether it's a mountain bike ride, because it's the same thing. It gives you a goal. It gives you something to train for. It gives you something, so I can answer the question, why do you still go to the gym? Well, I'm training for a competition,
Yeah. I noticed today I'm signing up for a new ultra, like tonight. I am, because I noticed that until, like, I have this almost like nervous energy around it. And if I'll just sign up, I can focus back in.
Yeah.
And, like the decision will be removed. And I know that, and I think that applies, metaphorically to so many other facets of life. But it's like, you got to show up.
Yeah.
I'm going to sign up, and then, then I can get back to focusing on things or training for it or whatever it might be, instead of like dreaming big and looking at maps and reading, fooling myself with the decision process. And I think that's an important takeaway too, is talking about doing the thing is not doing the thing.
Yeah.
Planning to do the thing is not doing the thing.
Yeah.
Doing the thing is doing the thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I think it kind of ties into this observation I've had of you through this conversation, that you're able to get new information and turn it into action. And then you do the thing.
Yeah.
Like you've learned that, these things contribute positively to your life, or you read a book that triggers some change.
Yeah.
And I think that it's powerful that then you do the thing.
Yeah.
Which is, it's powerful.
Yeah. No, it really is. And I, like I said, I think that does have a lot to do with my personality. Some people want to, and I think it's actually probably better to not go big or go home. But for me, that motto fits me well, is just to go big or go home. I have friends who I encourage all the time just to get a small win, right? Like, don't set a goal to go to the gym for 6 days a week. Maybe set a gym to go to the gym for 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and stop eating sugar, right? Like, just keep it small. But for me, and I'm still this way, like, I can't, I drink a lot of caffeine. I drink a couple, I call them healthy energy drinks, but I drink a couple energy drinks every day, probably before 9 o'clock, right? And it's a huge addiction. I've gone cold turkey off of caffeine, and I have to do that. I can't just drink like a Coke, or I can't just drink a tea with, 50 milligrams of caffeine in it. I have to be, for me, it's always been all or nothing, and it's the way it is with my diet too. If I'm like, well, I'm just going to eat good, then I'll eat good, but I'll eat twice as much as I should, So for me, it has to be extreme, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I have to count my calories, and I have to, if I'm going to really be diligent, you could call it lack of self-discipline or whatever, but it's kind of one way or the other for my personality,
Well, I think it's actually even more self-aware because you learn about yourself. It's a lot of the same thing.
Yeah.
More information and put it into action.
Yeah.
You know, you learn that it's an all or nothing thing. I'm similar in that sense. I quit drinking.
Yeah.
And I don't drink anymore.
That's awesome.
And I'm just not going to because I can't have one or two.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the all or nothing type of guy.
Yeah.
And I learned enough about myself to then turn that into action and say,
That's awesome.
you know,
Yeah.
gonna just stick with it. So I actually think that that it's a positive trait to be that self-aware and to apply it.
Yeah.
You know, because you obviously do that in so many different areas of your life anyway.
Yep. I think that's one thing that's really key to personal growth. And I think that's been a key to my growth over the last 4 or 5 years is being self-aware, right? I feel bad about how, like I don't have a lot of regrets. In fact, I'd say overall I don't have any regrets because I am who I am today because of mistakes I've made. But, you know, I can remember sitting in my bathtub actually and having the light go on of how much of my life I've wasted by not living to my highest and best use, right? Like, okay, I've been, like you said, I did the same, you know, why don't you, you know, just do the same thing and have the steady life? I did that for long enough. Even as a business owner, I was wondering why I wasn't making more money. Well, it was because I was doing the same thing for 10 years. And it occurred to me like, oh my gosh, like, and you hear that all the time. Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting things to change. And I'd heard that 1,000 times. But when it really clicked in, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I've wasted half of my life doing essentially the same thing and expecting my life to change, right? And I don't know, and since then, you know, I'm like, I can tell when I'm out of control with my kids. It's not that I don't get out of control, you know. I have hard times with my kids. I yell at my teenage boys and get after them. And there's times when I'm not a good dad, right? Or I'm not a good husband. But the key is being aware, right? Be like, oh, that was really bad, you know. And then I'll go apologize and move on. But, you know, self-awareness is, I would say, that's a huge factor in personal growth, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Josh, thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on, sharing
for
some
having me.
story,
Yeah.
sharing some wisdom. I want you to know that what you're doing matters and that people notice. So keep putting in the work. It was so fun to see you at the gym and not recognize you. Like what a great, you know, what a great thing. And I just want to thank you so sincerely. I'm very glad to know you. You're a great example. And it's fun to see you, you know, practicing what you preach and putting it into work and getting it done. So I do have it's becoming tradition.
Oh, nice.
But I've got an Inspire by Example shirt for you.
Awesome.
That I want you to have because the life
Sweet.
you are living is inspiring others through your example. And
that.
it's important that you're aware of that because we need more of it.
Yeah.
And more people that are spreading positivity and growth and, you know, just all of the good messages that you are. And so I just thank you a ton for sharing some of them with me today too.
No, I appreciate that. And I'd like to, you know, return the compliment. Honestly, ever since I met you, however long ago it was in BNI, you know, I'm like, man, that dude, I guarantee you he's going to go somewhere. You know, you definitely have I think that's one thing that the energy that you bring, you know, to your work is definitely, you know, unmatched, you know, and I think it's awesome. And I love it that you Murph every Monday and that you inspire me. I'm like, holy crap, man, I Murph once a year and I almost die. So, I mean, the stuff you're doing is it's definitely inspirational. So I'm honored to be your friend and I'm honored to be here. So appreciate that.
Thank you. It means a ton coming from you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Awesome.